Welcome back. Today I'm going to be discussing Asteroff you see behind me. This is going to piggyback off of a trip I did to New York City where I went to go visit the statue you see here behind me. It was a statue of Asteroff, the goddess of desire. Some refer to her as the abortion goddess or the sacrifice goddess. She is the wife of Moloch, another deity who has a very large following and who is greatly responsible or who has great ties to sacrificing of young children through abortion. Now, I'm going to be showing a video real quick on Moloch, the husband of Asteroff, who was once on top of a court building in New York City. Remember, in New York City, there was just before her arrival, there was another statue that was removed. It was a statue of Moses. Now, that's a drastic indicator of what message they were trying to get across. Remember, Moses is tied to the Moloch and Asteroff because of the golden calf. You know, he was in great opposition to these teachings and the religion that you see here behind me. Now, I'm going to show this video to let you understand why Moses was a prophet of God. Now, when I say a prophet of God, Moses is a prophet of all three of these books, the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. And the story of the golden calf is in all three books. And when I say all three books, they're in alignment. All three of these books refer to Asteroff, Moloch, or BAAl, whatever name you want to call them. And they talk about what they were doing back in their times. Now, these stories that are in these books, these aren't stories that happened, so long ago, we just forget about them. They're just stories we read about. These things keep happening over and over again. And it shows us what to look out for. That's why these books are so powerful. It shows us how the spirit of these entities move. Now, I'm going to show a brief clip. It's going to be showing the sacrificing or what they were doing back in those times, which is now has reemerged in present day through abortions. Now, take a look. Moloch. That right there is the temple of Moloch. The husband of Asteroff, you see next to it. Right there, they're bringing children into a furnace, tied up, being escorted into a fiery pit, the mouth of BAAl Moloch, the husband of Asteroff, who's sitting in front of a courthouse in New York City. What just played behind me was a movie clip where they were doing a somewhat of a representation of what this religion is about. Now, remember, the sacrificing of children isn't new. This whole thing about abortions and sacrifice has always found a way to keep coming up into society. Now, these religious books you see here behind me, the Bible, the Torah, Quran, talks about this and how it moves. Now, in present day, we're seeing this thing play out. and is moving through the political system, through the media, through entertainment. And let me explain something. Right now, there is a statue of Asteroff, the wife of Moloch, in front of a New York courthouse sitting in a park. Now, right now, I've said on many occasions, in this day and age, with the information through the internet that we have, that's going to pretty much verify everything that I'm saying about this deity Asteroff, who's sitting in front of a courthouse in New York City, and at one point was sitting on top of the courthouse, and not too long before that, a statue of Moses was removed. Now, was in drastic opposition to the teachings and beliefs of this deity and her husband, Moloch and Asteroff. Now, right now, it's sitting in front of the courthouse. Now, I went there and just asked random people, do you know what this symbolizes, what this means? And 100% of them said no. They didn't know. It's a beautiful statue. It's beautiful. But let me make something very clear to you. I've said many times before, that's the deception. Remember, this goddess and Moloch, well, let's stay focused on Asteroff. She is the goddess of desire. She will come to you in the form of beauty to entice you. All this can be verified. She is the warrior goddess. She's the goddess of desire. Now, when you go into the teachings, and remember, you said you have these books here, the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. They have their own books. They have their own religion. They have their own scripts and texts where they talk about this deity and what she demands. She demands sacrifices, either through war, sacrifice, or abortion. On all fronts. She cares nothing about you. The only thing she cares about are the sacrifices. And that's why you see in just about every representation of them, there's a picture of Asteroff or Moloch surrounded by children. Not out of love, it's out of sacrifice, because they want the babies, they want the sacrifices. This is all backed up through literature and text and scripts. The same way we have the Holy Bibles here, these holy books, the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran, they have their own texts, their own scripts that they go by. Whether they acknowledge it or not, if they are perpetuating sacrificing of children through abortion or anything like that, they're doing the work of this deity. Now, let me explain something to you. This particular deity that is in front of the courthouse in New York City was commemorated in honor of a Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was in support of abortions. Of course, they would commemorate it to her. And of course, they would use the statue of Asteroff to do it, the goddess of child sacrifice. Now, listen to me very closely. If you're getting this, you can no longer keep the blinders on in dealing with this subject. Now, remember, this particular spirit or entity, whatever you want to call it, or religion. Remember, when I talk on these shows, you know, I talk to a large group of people. It doesn't matter if you're the Bible, if you're into the Bible, the Torah, or the Quran, or if you're in politics, or if you're in media, entertainment. You may see these things happening, but not quite understand what you're seeing or why these things will happen. Or even if you're in the school system and see some of the things that they're implementing, you say, wait, this doesn't make sense. But if you look at it through the lens of a religion, it makes way more sense. Do the research. Now, hopefully I'm talking to some lawyers right now, and you're doing your due diligence to research this goddess Asteroff and her husband, and why it's connected to Supreme Court judges. And while all three of these books talk about how this spirit moves and how it comes in through deception, all in a ploy to get you to give your children up through abortion and through sacrifice through these deities. Remember, it's a spiritual movement. Remember, I've showed videos on this channel where a religious temple which called the abortions a religious abortion. It was a religious abortion ritual. A religious abortion ritual to go underneath the laws regarding Roe versus Wade. Remember, Roe versus Wade was overturned. Now abortions are illegal in this country. Now the same group that put up this statue is now using a type of way to go under the law by asking for a religious exemption. Remember, when these laws come into place with no more abortion, it drives up everything up. No more Planned Parenthoods. These doctors are out of work. All the federal funding that they were getting, these people were setting up shops in lower income communities, black communities, and they were setting up these Planned Parenthoods like they were liquor stores. This is happening in present day. And they talked about this in these books and how they moved through a spirit moving. Now, let me understand. It doesn't matter what religion you're in, because this particular deity and her husband, it was in opposition of all three of these books, the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. It talked about it, and the people who follow these books failed for the tactics and the manipulation through these deities all the time. And it talked about it. It talked about with Moses when he smashed the 10 Commandments in front of the golden calf. Remember the golden calf? It has direct ties with Moloch. He is the bull. They used the baby calf to make it more attainable. Remember, and these were followers of God. Remember, and I bring that up to say this. Now, I'm going to say this respectfully, because I'm going to be bringing up two Supreme Court judges. Both are passed away, so I say this respectfully. Now, at the time, I don't think that they knew. Maybe they did. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they knew the position that they were taking and what it exactly meant, the attacks they were under. Remember, anyone can be attacked spiritually or mentally when dealing with this thing. Remember, when the spirit came in, it didn't come at them and say, "Hey, look, we don't want to sacrifice children." It didn't say they want to sacrifice children. It never comes in saying exactly what it wants to do. But it came in saying, this is about women's rights. And we had two Supreme Court justices, both followers of one of these books. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a Jewish woman. She was in the Jewish faith, who was a proponent of abortions in this country, and who they named the statue after. Remember this. Now, if she was alive today, and if she was Jewish, which she said she was, you can look this up online, I would have to ask her, how did that line up with the Torah if you're Jewish? How does that line up with your teachings from the Torah? It does not. It was in drastic opposition to how you voted in regards to abortions in this country. And I have to ask the same thing to Thurgood Marshall, who passed away, who was Supreme Court Justice, who was the original, one of the original judges who voted to implement Roe versus Wade to make abortions illegal in this country. He was from the branch, he was a branch of the Roman Catholic Church. Now I have to ask him, how did that line up with the Bible, which you profess to follow? It did not line up with it. It was in drastic opposition to it. Now, to anyone who's viewing this, and if your stance on abortion is in line with any one of those judges, and you follow any of these books, I asked you, I'm gonna have to ask you, how was your thoughts and your feelings on abortion when it's referring to these Bibles? Now, if you don't follow these Bibles, or this Torah or these Qurans, I'm not talking to you. This has nothing to do with you. I'm talking about the people of these three books. If you're one of those who don't follow these books, this is not the channel for you. I'm talking about the people who follow these books. So right now in the United States of America, due to the laws passed by these Supreme Court justices, the judges of the land, it led to over 36 million babies being aborted in this country. Now that's the low number. That's the low number that they're reporting. This is all could be documented since it was implemented. This during the 49-year span where abortions were allowed to happen in this country. You mean to tell me over 36 million babies were aborted due to those laws? Now I'm gonna have to ask you, how does that line up with any one of these books? This was a massive failure to anyone who is a follower of these books to see what is happening to this country. I'd have to ask, where does it line up with? This has to stop, because remember, with the law being passed, you have the same group trying to go underneath the law and are now pushing for a religious exemption to be done virtually. You can go sit on your own phone in the comfort of your home and order this abortion to be done. Now, the way they're moving now, virtually, and it was a 49-year span where they lost 36 million. Going virtually, they can hit that number in less than a decade. Now, I'm going to have to ask you, where are the soldiers at? We're going to have to stop this. This is a political movement. Make no mistake about it. This thing is moving through the political system, and it showed its face. This whole thing with Moloch and his wife Asteroff and the statue in front of a courthouse at one point in time, and on top of a courthouse, they're moving through the political system. And guess what is moving now? That was the name of the statue when they pulled it up. Now they're moving. At the same time, they implemented, like I showed on this channel, a satanic temple pushing for a religious exemption on what they call a spiritual abortion, a religious spiritual abortion done through a satanic temple, of course. And a statue being put up in honor of a U.S. Supreme Court justice for the work that she did to promote the work of this goddess and her husband. You can look all this up. So the same lawyers, politicians, as you study for cases, do your work on this, on Asteroff and her husband and how it's moving in your own courthouses. All this can be backed up. Look at the name of it, where it came from, who she is. Now, I'm about to ask, if at this point in time in history, if you're not seeing this, you're either with it, or you're a paid informant to perpetuate this nonsense. These religious abortions that they call it, religious sacrifices. These are the words coming out of these satanic temples. When do you say enough is enough? 36 million babies, where science is telling you, not just science, the words out of these three books said there is a life in that woman's womb. The God of these three books, the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran, is the God of life. Asteroff and her husband are the gods of death in opposition to these books. There were massive battles concerning these two deities, the God of these three books, the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran, and Asteroff and her husband Moloch. They're referred to as Satan. Yes, this is it. Present day playing out. 36 million babies. Now, they've done a masterful job of teaching you. No, it's just a statue. It's just in front of a courthouse. No, we're just commemorating it to a Supreme Court judge. It means nothing. They've done a masterful job convincing you of that. But not all of us have been convinced. We have the truth here. This is a satanic group that's behind it that is moving through the political system. And we need, guess what? Political lawyers. People who can see things as I'm seeing to fight this. Because if not, they'll go for another 36 million. They'll go for 100 million babies to feed this religion, this deity, because it asks for it. Remember, the job of any religion or any cult is to spread the word, and they're doing it. They're moving through the laws. I said before, while we're sitting here fighting these groups, of fighting these petty battles, they'll have all three of these books going at each other, the Bible, Torah, and the Quran. And the enemy is moving right in front of your face. Right in front of your face. Remember, it will come in disguised. It never comes in telling you what it wants to do. It definitely won't tell you it wants to sacrifice your children. It came in under the guise of women's rights. It used the woman to do it. Remember, what did Eve do to Adam? Satan used Eve to get at Adam through the apple. This is happening present day, is using the woman to go after man under the guise of women's rights. I'm all for women's rights, but when it comes to abortions, that's when the separation happens, because it goes against these books. I'm the messenger here, and I follow the God of these books, and it says that he's the God of life. Every single life is precious. Remember, the God of this book, of all three of these books, he said he won't forget not one death. Not one death. And we here in front of a courthouse in New York City, you have the goddess of death in front of it, connected to a Supreme Court judge who was pushing a narrative of sacrificing children through abortion. Enough is enough. So take a look. If you're a lawyer, do your due diligence and do your research. If you've seen these things, I don't care what group, if you're in the military, look at it and ask yourself, what do they have you in? Do they have you so blinded that you're even willing to put the blinders on yourself to not see the truth? And I challenge you, do your research on this and see what's in front of that courthouse in New York City. I'll leave it at that. Good day.